My people, you are about to enter into the promised land. You are the second generation since we left Egypt nearly 40 years ago. As you know, your parents have not made it. It is up to you to go into the promised land. Soon, I will go the way of your parents. I will not enter the promised land with you. And so before you go, I want to leave you with a few words. You see, God has put before us two ways. The way of life and the way of death. As you enter the promised land, choose life, that it may go well with you. There are four basic points that I want to make to you now. So you may want to take out your papyrus and take some notes. I will try to remember them all, but in my age it's hard to remember. And I'm a little scattered. First, you need to know that the ways of Egypt, the ways of Pharaoh, the ways of death are very powerful and very seductive. They will call you back. You must remind one another of that power and that seduction, and you must resist. You cannot do it alone. You must do this together. Second, always remember that God is working in the world to bring justice and compassion and love. Always remember what happened to Egypt as we left. And let that be a warning to you as you enter into the promised land. Cultures that oppress go against God's will, and God works within those cultures, and they will not survive. So do not oppress your neighbors or the stranger in your midst. The third point is that you always have a choice. You always have the choice to live your life in the ways of love. Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. And the fourth point. You see, this is where I forget. The fourth point is, it'll come back to me. Now, you need to remember, the fourth point. The fourth point is that you may find yourself on the theological or political spectrum of the left or the right. That doesn't matter. Anyone, no matter where you stand on this, can live out the decrees that God has given us. We may do it in different ways. But if we live this out, all of the quarrels that we've had in the past would go away, because we wouldn't have the energy for them. Now, you need to know the story of your parents. They were enslaved in Egypt. We had grown too many for Egypt, and Pharaoh was afraid of us. He was afraid that we might take over or that we might join another army against Egypt. And so Pharaoh enslaved us. It made us work very, very hard to make bricks. He thought that would make us tired. But if there is one commandment that we Hebrews like, it is to be fruitful and multiply. And so it didn't work. So we kept making babies and Pharaoh got upset, and Pharaoh said to our midwives, they may spare the girls, but they must kill the boys. But our midwives loved God and knew that God was a God of life, not a God of death. So they chose the way of life, risked their own lives, so that the boys might live. Pharaoh saw that this was happening, and so he said to his fellow Egyptians that if they wanted to be patriotic, and if they found a Hebrew boy, they needed to throw them into the river and kill them. Many boys died. I, on the other hand, lived. My mother spared me and put me in a reed made of basket made of reeds. That's it. And put me into the Nile. My sister Miriam followed me and saw that I was picked up by Pharaoh's daughter, who knew that I was a Hebrew, but she had compassion for me. She chose the way of life and risked her life that I may live. And so I, Moses, grew up in Pharaoh's house. I was a member of the royal family, but I always knew that I was different. I always knew that I was not quite like my brothers and my sisters. And one day I asked my mom, who am I? And she said that I was one of you. And my identity changed forever that day. Instead of seeing you as slaves, I saw you as my people. And one day I saw a Hebrew or an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew with a whip. And I couldn't handle it anymore. And that day I chose the way of death. I killed that taskmaster, and I buried him in the sand. But you cannot hide from the ways of death. It will catch up with you. And the next day, I discovered that it had been found out, and so I ran. I ran as far as I could, because Pharaoh was after me. I ran to another country named Midian, where I met the high priest there. And I became the shepherd of his sheep. And one day, I went out, took the sheep to the mountain, and I saw a bush that was burning, and yet it wasn't consumed. And I looked at it. I heard a voice coming from the bush, and it said, Moses. And I said, yes. And it said, I have heard the cry of my people in Egypt. I will go and rescue them. I will go and rescue them. The bush kept saying, I will do this. I will do that. And then you know what the bush said? So you go, Moses. I said, what is the name that I should give them? And the bush said, Yahweh. Yahweh? What is that? Yahweh is a whisper. Yahweh is not powerful. Yahweh means, I am what I am, or I will be what I will be. How am I supposed to confront Pharaoh with a name like that? All Yahweh said was, I will be with you. There was nothing in there about success. Nothing told me that I would succeed in this. I will be with you. That was it. And that's one of the things that you need to know as you enter the promised land. You are not promised success. You are promised that God will be with you. In that promise, be with one another. God hears the cry of the victims of human culture. So hear the cry of one another. Listen to one another. Pay attention. Be present to one another. So I ended up going back to Egypt and confronting Pharaoh. I said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh refused. And I warned Pharaoh that God is a God of justice and that no nation can stand if your nation is based on oppression. If your nation is based on the few getting rich on the backs of the many, you will not stand. That is not God's justice. Pharaoh wouldn't listen. And God worked for many months to show Pharaoh that it wouldn't last. But Pharaoh was stubborn. His heart hardened. And he wouldn't let us go. Until finally, Pharaoh's son died. Until finally, Pharaoh, who tried to kill all of the baby boys, experienced the death of his own boy. And he said, "Leave." And so we left. Your parents always wanted to go back, though. Sometimes slavery is comfortable. Sometimes Pharaoh always calls you back to the ways of death. But God is calling you into the often uncomfortable way of life and love. So we continued on our journey. And we came to a mountain. On that mountain, God gave me the 10 Commandments. And here is what you need to know about the 10 Commandments. Think of them as the anti-Egypt. Think of the 10 Commandments as the anti-death, as the way of life. Because you see, the first commandment, "Have no other gods before me," you may think comes from a God who is jealous. But no! "Have no other gods before me" means don't go back to the idols of Egypt. Because you see, Pharaoh thought that he was the son of the god Ra, the most powerful god in the world. And what Ra did was justify Pharaoh's oppression of your parents. Here's how you know if you have created an idol. If your God always justifies your self-serving desires, you know that you are worshiping the God Yahweh, if Yahweh leads you to self-giving. So have no other gods before Yahweh. The last 6 commandments are about how to live together. Honor your father and mother. Respect one another. Do not kill. Do not lie. The final commandment, do not covet your neighbor's things. Do you ever want what your neighbor has? Of course you do. It's human nature. Compare ourselves with others, but that leads to the way of death. Don't do it. Instead, follow the passage that I wrote in a little book called Leviticus, where it says, "Love thy neighbor as you love yourself." Seek the good of your neighbor. And while I was up there, your parents fell back, and God became very angry. Your parents had created an idol and were worshiping it, breaking commandments number 1 and 3. And God became wrathful and said, "I am angry with these people let me kill them and start over with you. And I said, no, Yahweh. I reminded Yahweh who Yahweh was. I said, you are not like the gods of Egypt who kill people and oppress people. That is an idol. You are Yahweh who hears the cry of victims. So don't make victims. To this day, I don't know if that was actually Yahweh talking to me or my own anger projected onto Yahweh. Either case, Yahweh did not kill your parents in Sodom. So I came down from the mountain and we started over again. But quarreling kept happening. The desire to go back to Egypt kept happening. And each time, God provided for us manna from heaven. Bread came down whenever your parents complained about having no food. Whenever they complained about having no water, I struck the rock and water flowed. God is with you. God will provide for you. As you enter into the promised land and enter into relationships with your neighbors and with other nations, you must always ask yourself, are we choosing the way of life, or are we choosing the way of death? There may come times when you think you need to go to war against other nations. Ask yourself if that is the way of life or the way of death. As you enter into the promised land, I hope that you choose life, that it may go well with you. Before I go to Mount Nebo for the end of my life, I will leave you with this blessing, taught to me by my brother Aaron and my sister Miriam. May God bless you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May God look upon you with kindness and bring you peace this day